Hello and welcome to 5 to Watch here on the Football 365 show, brought to you by Football Index, where you bet on the football stock market by buying shares in the world's top players. 18 plus, begambleaware.org. I'm your host, Mark Smith. I'm here as ever with Pete Farries. We've got a lot to talk about, as we always sort of do on this show, but particularly now with this, too many fixtures really, isn't it? It's too much football at this time of year, but I'm sort of happy with that. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like and subscribe and press the notification bell so you never miss a show going forward. This is 5 to Watch, brought to you by Football Index. Right, Pete, let's start with Jamie Vardy. Leicester, 2 draws in a row, having not drawn any games this season. Drew against Manchester United, drew against Palace. Talk to me about them.
Yeah, games where Leicester maybe weren't at their very best, and normally I like Leicester away from home, and they maybe will be disappointed with what they did against Palace, but ultimately this is the Christmas period. It's a Christmas period at the end of an absolutely bizarre year for many reasons, and I think we'll get a few odd or at least a few flat performances. Maybe Leicester, you could argue, go into that, and I'm not worried about Leicester. They will still finish top 5, 6, 7 maybe even. They are going very, very well. They're very dangerous. If they can keep their best players fit, then I think they'll be absolutely fine. But just a bit of a flat couple of games.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not a bad time to drop a few points, though, really. If you look at the table and look who their rivals are, their direct rivals, you look at Spurs, who have just... The wins have dried up. I mean, if Liverpool can draw at home to West Brom and they can drop points there, then yeah, Leicester are allowed to drop points against United. They're allowed to drop points away at Palace. But someone who's always absolutely at the forefront of anything that happens with Leicester is Jamie Vardy. Let's talk about him. He didn't score the goal against United, but he certainly was integral to it going in. And then he came off the bench against Palace and, again, didn't score, but was someone who was very effective and managed to help out getting them a result in the end. Jamie Vardy, talk.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that I think now at 33, he's as fast as he's ever been, which is absolutely ludicrous. I'm 33 and I struggle to walk places, so that's pretty impressive to me.
Yeah.
I think we will see him, he started most of the games this season. I think we will see a few more bench appearances, certainly during busy periods, because of course you're going to get that at 33. Brendan Rodgers is being very sensible. And while, you could argue Vardy's not been phenomenal at times this season, he's still tied second highest goal scorer in the Premier League.
He's unbelievable.
Only Mo Salah has scored more goals than Jamie Vardy. A few other players have got 11 as well in the league, but only Salah has scored more goals. So when you think of it like that, he is still one of the most valuable players in the Premier League.
Yeah, from a Football Index point of view, what are you saying about Jamie Vardy here?
Well, his yield this season hasn't been maybe exactly what you'd want it to be. In fact, I'd argue it's been fairly flat. But he is still a player. I mean, 11 goals is still going to get you a good match-day dividend or an in-play dividend, whether you've got him in those first 30 days or not. It's as simple as that. I think he will score more goals. And if you don't want to buy Jamie Vardy now, then make sure you buy him ahead of the 27th of February, because that's when they play Arsenal. And of course, we know that Jamie Vardy scores against Arsenal all the time.
A minimum of 2 hat-tricks in that game.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Right, Pete, let's talk about Manchester United, shall we? They drew away at Leicester, a game that they probably should have won. A bit of wasteful finishing from Marcus Rashford. They've got Wolves next, always a tough one. Wolves are a very solid side. Do you see them being real title contenders here, Pete? A lot of people have been talking about it. I'm still not completely convinced.
No, nor am I. I mean, 4th in the Premier League right now. I have a weird thing with Manchester United. They feel like the event horizon of football because they make no sense to me whatsoever. They don't make the right decisions in the transfer market, yet they're 4th. They've only lost 3 games this season, all 3 at Old Trafford, by the way. Palace, Spurs and Arsenal. I mean, they're a bizarre side because in my head, they're doing really badly. And then I look at the Premier League table and go, they're 4th. I don't think anyone beats Liverpool to the title. I just don't think anyone gets beyond Liverpool this season, as much as they were flat the other day. But they are certainly looking dangerous. They look great on the counter-attack. We know the amount of pace they've got in Bruno Fernandes. They've got the best signing that arguably any team has made in the last 12 months. They're a strange team. I can't really get my head around Manchester United, but there's no doubt that right now they're going very, very well.
I don't know. Maybe they are a contender. I've got no idea. What I will say is they're one of the most exciting teams to watch. I love watching them at the minute because they're great going forward. They can't really defend. But I want to talk about a particular player, Paul Pogba. Didn't start against Leicester. Hasn't actually been starting that many games. They've been preferring a McTominay and Fred double pivot in the midfield. He came on against Leicester, didn't he? Started the second half, and he showed that he's an unbelievable talent, Pete. He's one of the most talented footballers in the world. It's just that he's not quite able to be consistent. Talk to me about Paul Pogba.
Well, the fact is that Paul Pogba, can't be consistent because he doesn't know what he wants. I think my personal opinion is that Mino Raiola tries to tell him what he wants, and then Solskjaer's in the way, the club's in the way, his teammates are in the way, and you see other players coming through and taking the lead at Manchester United. It's a very... Sorry, mate.
With that in mind, then, so we've got January coming up, transfer window. Do you see him leaving the club? Everyone's talking about this, fine, but do you see him leaving the club? And secondly, what sort of impact would that have, or could that have, with regards to Football Index and Paul Pogba?
I think, in regards to how it affects Manchester United, the answer is positively. Yes, I do think he leaves. I mean, the fact is that from a Football Index point of view, Paul Pogba, over the last 3 months, has got you 52 pence per share in media dividends. That is insane. That makes him a phenomenal bet right now. It's as simple as that. Of course, things can change and things can go badly for you. I do think he will go, but there is no doubt that from a media dividend point of view, you buy Paul Pogba right now and you watch those media dividends through January at least come in, because whether he moves or doesn't, he will get that coverage.
Right, let's talk about Crystal Palace. A good result against Tottenham was followed by a horror show, and I absolutely mean a horror show, against Liverpool, followed by what might have been a worse performance and result against Aston Villa with 10 men. But they turned it around a little bit. They've stopped the bleeding, if you like, with a decent result at home to Leicester City, who in my books are certainly probably the best team away from home in the Premier League. So a good result against Leicester. How do you see it going for Palace from here on in? Do you see this being one of those results you can rally around and really build something on, or do you think it's just a flash in the pan performance?
They'll just get enough wins. I mean, as always with Crystal Palace, you'll live, but it won't be a good life. They get the job done. They stay in the Premier League, and that's all the club can hope for now. And it's all the club's achieving. They're still plenty of points away, from relegation. They're 13th in the league at the time of recording. They're fine. They're dull to watch, but Roy Hodgson is a phenomenal manager, and
they shouldn't be dull to watch. They shouldn't be dull to watch. They've got some players who I absolutely love. Let's. Obviously Zaha, we'll talk about him in a second, but they've also got Eze, looks like a really good player.
Yeah.
Ayew's a really good player. They've got some players who are just, they should be box office, and occasionally they are, but it's only occasional. And I wonder if it's because Hodgson's got this pretty strict, pretty rigid system that doesn't necessarily suit the qualities of the players he's got.
Well, it's not even, I don't think that. I think that these players are very good players, but they're not good enough to do that regularly all at the same time. And he knows that the rest of the squad aren't good enough to keep them going. So he has to be pragmatic. And while, I appreciate some fans won't like that, I think he does the right thing.
Yeah, you're probably right. Wilf Zaha, let's talk about him though. Yeah. He scored the goal against Leicester to open the scoring. They couldn't quite hang on to it. But Zaha, he's somebody... I love Wilf Zaha. I think he had a poor season last season by his standards. But he's a talisman. He's a genuine Premier League talisman. When Arsenal didn't sign him and went for Pepe instead, I absolutely could not believe what I was looking at. Wilf Zaha is a wonderful footballer. What's it looking like for him on Football Index at the moment?
Well, he's 9th in matchday dividend rankings, which is pretty impressive when you think about it. I think he will get some media attention as well, because there could be some discussions about him maybe moving on, which is also another kind of interesting way to look at Wilfried Zaha from a betting point of view. But ultimately, he scores goals. He's got 8 this season in 14. That's not bad for you. So again, him playing...
That's fantastic.
It's very, very good. And the only thing I'd say is that having watched Pepe in France, I would disagree that I think Pepe is actually a much better player than Wilfried Zaha, although he's not shown it yet at Arsenal.
But if you go for Zaha, you know what you're getting. You know you're getting a player who can play in the Premier League and can...
You know you're getting that at a club where he's the big fish. You don't know you're getting that at a club where he's not.
Big Sam is back in the Premier League, Pete. I am absolutely over the moon to see him back. Love that man. Love his entire vibe. Love what he gets up to in the dugout. And do you know what? I love the performance that West Brom gave him away at Liverpool. They were fantastic. They deserved at least a point for my money. And one of the saves of the season we saw from their keeper, Sam Johnstone.
Yeah, I really like Johnstone. I really, really like him. I mean, he's been one of the busiest goalkeepers in the Premier League this season. He's played 15 times. He's conceded 30 goals, kept only 2 clean sheets. But that
doesn't sound great.
Well, no, but it's in a team fighting relegation, and I guarantee you that will improve. That rate of clean sheets, or at least goals to appearances, is going to shrink because he's got Sam Allardyce in charge. And what Sam Allardyce will do is at least give them a fighting chance of staying in the Premier League. He might even go West Brom Great Escape #2 and get them to actually do it, which would be remarkable. But Sam Johnston's going to be a big, big part of this, because They are going to be under pressure at times. They are going to have to deal with some very, very good clubs, and later in the season, some very desperate clubs. And I think Johnston's actually had a better season than his stats suggest for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's not going to be pretty, but it is going to be effective, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, me too.
Right, Pete, let's talk about West Ham. I've got to say, it's been a very strange season for them, hasn't it? Some really high highs, some very low lows. And I think that first half at home to Brighton, okay, they ended up getting a point from it, but that first half was probably the lowest point of the season. I'd even say that the announcement of the team list was so uninspiring as to just... David Moyes, it's Christmas, mate. Come on, give us something to cheer for. You're playing Mark Noble in the number 10 when you've got Ben Rama on the bench, you've got Lanzini on the bench. Talk me through it, Pete. What's going on?
Well, what's going on is that David Moyes has certainly post-Everton anyway or at least, no, I'll rephrase that. Certainly in the better jobs that he's had or the better jobs he's done, he's relied on teams being solid. Now, I appreciate that's a little bit odd away at Brighton when you really should be going for Brighton. Sorry, home to Brighton, I should say. So you should be going for them. You know, whether you're at home or whether you're away, you should be going for Brighton, especially as Brighton haven't pulled up any trees. But he didn't, and it ends up being this weird kind of sort of 2-2 odd draw, which I think it was. The fact is,
nothingness, though, wasn't it? It was nothing. It was
he has done a good job, Moyes. This is where I think the kind of confusion comes, because the fact is that West Ham's transfer policy over a long time has been garbage, and yet he's managed to rally people around. He's managed to get the players playing, and they're getting the results that they need. So, as much as I completely disagree leaving all that flair on the bench, that's not actually working out that badly for him this season.
I agree. Moyes is a good manager. You don't manage for this long in the Premier League and get some of the jobs he's got without being an excellent manager. But it's just very uninspiring. If I'm a West Ham fan, I'm gutted. However, one player who is doing an excellent job for West Ham and who is starting every single game is the new Fellaini himself, Tomas Soucek. Let's talk about Tomas Soucek, Pete.
He's scoring a couple of goals. He's probably not going to score you enough goals to get you a brilliant match day or in-play dividend, although that will occasionally happen. But for me, at his age, nowhere near 30 years old yet, if he keeps playing the way he's playing, there is a deal coming for him. It's as simple as that. There is money. There is going to be a buy for Tomas Soucek.
You heard it here first.
So if you get involved in him now, I think that will pay an actual dividend on your bet further down the line. Of course, I might be wrong and it could go the other way. That's how these things work, sadly. But I do think that he is really building a name for himself. There's a lot of scouts reportedly looking at Soucek now. He's picking up the occasional goal like he did the other day, like he did against Manchester United. So you put all that together and all of a sudden Tomas Soucek starts to look like a little bit of value on Football Index, I think.
I would hate to play against Tomas Soucek. I would hate it. Yeah. Although I hate to play against any of the Premier League footballers, as they are very good at football compared to me. Anyway, that's all we've got time for this week here on 5 to Watch on the Football 365 show. Thank you, Pete Farries, for joining me. Thank you at home for watching. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email us. It's the editor@football365.com. Until next time, this has been 5 to Watch, brought to you by Football Index.